Kevin Cleary here with a knife video for you. And today we've got something pretty cool to take a look at. Now, I've got to say, I've never been on a Cruze, so I can't really tell you a lot about what a normal Cruze is like. But here we have the Curtis Cruze, and I don't know if there's any similarities, but I will do my best to tell you what this guy's like and what I appreciate about it, and perhaps what I'm not so much in love with. And hopefully you guys will get an idea of whether or not this is a knife that you would be interested in. I will have to say this. Well, this is quite a departure from the Curtis F3, which I absolutely love. I've had both the medium and the large and really liked both of them quite a bit. This is a bit of a departure, as I said, but it still sort of captures the feel and the look. I mean, I don't know. To me, guys, you guys can disagree if you'd like, but to me, this still kind of screams out Curtis knives. Okay, the design aesthetic and the overall sort of feel that Dave Curtis brings to his knives is still very present here, and I really appreciate that. So while it's a departure, it's still got that sort of Curtis knives feel. I will say, if you're only interested in the F3, if that's the primary thing that you like about Curtis knives, that one particular model, you may not be all that drawn to this. Now, on the other hand, if you like the feel and the look of the F3, but you want something a little more smaller, a little more pocket friendly, then perhaps you'd be very drawn to this. And in fact, in terms of size and weight and overall philosophy, this kind of reminds me of the Zero Tolerance 0450. And, you know, that's a very popular model for ZT because it's again, smaller, lighter, a little easier on the pocket. It's not so overbuilt and heavy duty. Now, this certainly has some of those features, and we'll talk about those when we get to size and weight. Finally, one last thing before we move into the rest of our discussion about the specifics of this knife in general. This is a custom knife, okay? Dave, you can see right here, Curtis Custom Knives here. Dave is a custom knife maker, and that's not really my wheelhouse. Okay, I like kind of custom knives, and I can appreciate the designs, and I know and have talked with some of the makers, and I really like them as people, but to me, custom knives are sort of in the same category as high-end cars. Okay, I really think Porsches and BMWs are cool, and Ferraris and Lamborghinis, and you know, like you, if I'm walking through the mall parking lot and I happen to see a Porsche there, I'll probably stop and peek in the windows and kind of examine it. I may even watch, you know, YouTube videos about it, or look it up online and just enjoy kind of learning about it. But I'm not going to run out and buy one. Okay, and I kind of feel the same way about custom knives. And I'd love to hear your thoughts down below. What brings you to a video like this? Do you watch this because you're seriously considering going out and picking one of these up? Or is it more because, you know, you appreciate some higher end stuff and it's fun to learn about it and it's fun to look at it because it is really beautiful, and I can absolutely appreciate the craftsmanship of this and just the overall quality of it. But again, like the Porsche, I don't feel strongly driven to own a bunch of custom knives. I really don't. All right, so, and by the way, to those custom knife makers out there who are watching, don't take this the wrong way. I love many of the things that lots of you are doing, and I've had many custom knives on this channel and reviewed them very positively. It's not that I dislike them at all. It's just that I don't feel a strong desire to go out and have a whole lot of custom knives. Again, I'd love to hear kind of your take on that down in the comments if you kind of feel the same way and how you view custom knives. Now, let's move on to some of the more specific things about this knife. And I've got to say, overall, I find this to be an extremely beautiful knife and a really interesting balance that this knife strikes. Okay, so this knife is not, you know, it's not a small knife by any means. It's a little more than 8 1/8 inches overall. The blade length is 3.5 inches. The cutting edge is, of course, a little less than that. You can see about 3 1/4 there. The handle size, 4 9/16, only weighs in at 3.5 ounces, which is, it's actually a little under 3.5 ounces, which is very comfortable to carry around with you. One thing I will point out here as we're dealing with this size and weight stuff is the grip area is not huge if you're kind of restricting yourself just to this. Now there's quite a big sort of bit of space here for, you know, my pinky, you can see kind of lands back near the back part of the knife, and my 3 fingers end up being more in what we would normally think of as the grip area. Okay, this also does have a choil, so you can choke up, giving you even a little more space if you want to do that. Um, And now there's one other thing here that I want to point out. So this is a smaller knife, small, I don't know. It's a small feeling knife. Let's put it that way. It's not a small knife, but it's not huge either. Okay, but it does do something that's a little bit interesting and probably will put some people off, but to me really adds some character to the knife. And that is, while this is certainly a smaller, easily carried knife, the materials are not thin, okay, by any means. The blade stock here is about 5/32, as is the handle material, the carbon fiber and the titanium over here. So it's still got a lot of that beefy material we're used to seeing from Curtis knives. And that is actually something I like quite a lot. It still carries that feel of a Curtis knife, but it does so in a much lighter, more manageable package. Now, I think that gives it an interesting balance. Is it a hard use knife? No, I wouldn't really call it that. In fact, it would lean to me toward a gentleman's carry or even an office carry, but it's still got those big beefy components that we're used to seeing from Curtis knives. Let's begin talking about those components with the blade. The blade is one of my favorite things on this knife. The grind is a very aggressive hollow grind, making this super thin behind the edge. And I've got to say, if you're cutting cardboard or cheese or anything where you're going to move that knife through material, it just works so, so well. Now, the only drawback you're going to experience with a blade like this, where it's very thick with an aggressive hollow grind, is, yeah, if you're slicing an apple, let's say, or maybe a potato, something that's brittle, okay, this will kind of want to wedge that material apart, okay? And so that's something to consider about the performance of this blade, but I have to say that in regular everyday cutting tasks, and food prep is not one of the things I often do with my knife, everything else, this is so, so good. It's thin behind the edge. It gives you lots of material and very good strength all the way out to the tip. Look at how much material and strength is continued out all the way to the very tip there. So very confidence inspiring knife. This is a knife that, even though it's a little smaller, it's a little slimmer, it's a little leaner, doesn't lack in that department of, just feeling like you're really still ready for anything. And that is largely, or at least in part, that's because of this really, really nice blade grind. Now, the thing we haven't talked about, so this is M390 steel, hand ground blade, and I've got to say this, the quality of this grind and the beauty of it, this is one of the prettiest blades that I have ever seen. And I mean, it's not compound, there's not a bunch of crazy stuff going on, it doesn't have DLC some places and all that. It's just simple and fantastic. I know there's somebody out there who's going to freak out when I say fantastic. That's kind of why I inserted it in there. But what a beautiful, functional blade. Really one of my favorite things about this knife. I absolutely love this blade. Okay, moving on from there, and I could go on just about the grind and the thinness behind the edge and the slight thickening toward the tip, which is going to make it a little more robust and a little more reliable. The labeling on the blade here, okay, the Curtis Custom Knives, I don't find it overly obtrusive. I don't find it detracts from this blade in any way. In fact, I kind of like it. So yeah, that's the blade. If you haven't figured it out, I'm a big, big fan of this blade. Absolutely gorgeous and just, yeah, it's functional, it's beautiful, it's everything that I could possibly ask for in a high-end knife blade. Moving on now to lockup and deployment. This, if you've been watching up to this point, I'm sure you've already figured out that this is a titanium frame lock that is deployed with a flipper. The detent is really nice. So I put my finger here, and by the way, look at this flipper tab. It has this really nice jimping. This is a flipper tab that kind of just tells you, okay, this is where you put your finger, and when you do, the blade just deploys quickly and smoothly every single time. Really, really like that a lot. Now, the closing is perhaps not as drop shutty as we've seen with some knives, and that's because this is a fairly small, lightweight blade, and we've got a fair bit of lock bar tension on it. So it's drop shut. Okay, so if I take the lock bar off, you can see it does free drop, but once that lock bar pressure is back on the blade, then it'll kind of stick wherever you put it. If you shake it down, it will close. Okay, you can see that there. But it's not like say a Grimsmo where it just is a guillotine. All right. We also have stainless steel lock bar insert here. Now, the last I checked, Dave Curtis was putting D2, I believe, here. So we've got a good quality high-end steel in that blade stock, in that, wow, in that lock bar insert, inspiring a lot of confidence and making sure that we've got, similar hardness in the two materials, which I do like and is going to increase the longevity of the knife. We've also got something else really cool happening here that we've often talked about with Curtis knives, and that is this oversized pivot serves also as an over travel stop for the lock bar, which I like quite a bit. The lock bar is pretty easily accessible. I don't have any issue unlocking this. As long as I sort of put a little bit of pressure on there, I can get at it pretty easily. This is definitely a knife that I fidgeted with quite a bit and found it fairly comfortable for, sitting on the couch and just flipping your knife open and closed and driving your wife crazy. If that's something you like to do with your knives, this is definitely up to the task. And so, yeah, if you're looking for a good quality feeling pivot, that we've come to expect from any high-end custom knife, this definitely delivers on that. All right, so that's lockup and deployment. Not a huge departure from what we're used to seeing elsewhere. Oh, I will point out, I don't think we've talked about this, the fact that we have an internal stop pin there. So there you go. And you can see the stop pin is in the handle, not in the blade. All right, you can see the blade moving past that stop pin down into the closed position. So very nicely done in terms of lockup and deployment. It's comfortable. And that's one of the things I have to say. Not every flipper tab is well suited to deployment, right? The ergonomics have not always been thought out, but Dave Curtis always thinks that out very well and does a great job giving us a comfortable, reliable flipper tab that really lets us get some traction and some leverage there. Let's move on to the handle itself. Now, notice, or again, I should point out that there is some variation available on these handles. This one has the blue hardware and the carbon fiber scale here on the show side. There are a number of different materials and a number of different finishes and different colors for hardware. So all of those things are options on the Curtis website, and you'd have to kind of look there and figure out exactly how you want your particular one to be. Or if you're looking on the used market, you need to know that those do increase the cost. So if you're going to pick one of these up, then you kind of got to look at what options it has and figure out what kind of value needs to be placed on the knife then. So this one, of course, is carbon fiber. The full titanium version is going to be a little bit heavier. We mentioned this one weighs about 3.5. I don't know exactly what the full Ti version weighs, but it's going to be a little bit more. And this carbon fiber, take a look, is about exactly what you would expect on a knife like this. Just really, really beautiful, nicely finished. Sort of a bead blast on the titanium, which is good, and I think it fits the design of this knife very well. But I must admit, part of the practical side of me appreciates the sort of heavy stonewash finish on the F3. This is a little classier, a little cleaner. I get that, but I kind of appreciate that stonewash. And the blue ano on this is very, very nice. Look how cool that looks. Really, really beautiful. Single position pocket clip here that, of course, is pretty well, it's directly designed for this side of the knife, so you're not going to move this over without making some substantial changes. We've got a small lanyard hole, and you can see the previous owner has put this lanyard on with this really nicely anodized bead. And I like this. So normally I'm not a lanyard guy, but I left this on, and I haven't felt the need to take it off or change it, even though I considered taking it off for the review so that it would be kind of clean. And I was like, no, I'm going to leave it on because I kind of like it. We've got a titanium backspacer here. No internal milling of any kind, but the knife's not overly heavy, so internal milling would kind of be unnecessary anyway. In terms of the aesthetics on this, wow, what am I saying? In terms of the ergonomics on this, this is a very comfortable knife in hand. No real hot spots here. The only the only kind of ergonomic complaint that I could potentially make is the when I choke up on the knife, the choil is not huge, and I don't know, it doesn't feel as nice in the choked up position as the full size, as the large F3 or something like that does. In standard grip, it feels quite good. Everything you can see here is rounded and finished well. Don't get really any hot spots from the clip. That's a tough one to call, guys, because people's hands are so different that maybe you will. I've tried to watch a few other reviews and no one was specifically complaining about that. So I don't think I mean, it's not come up as a big issue from my own sort of looking into it. So ergonomics, handle construction, all very, very nice. Let's go ahead now and get to some comparisons. Now I don't have a lot to compare to this because as I've said before, I'm not really a big custom knife guy, but I do have some high-end folders here that I'll bring in. First though, you know, my favorite Curtis is absolutely the large F3. I adore this knife. I carry it a ton. I just find it's beautiful, it's functional, it's big and hand filling and confidence inspiring. I really, really enjoy this knife a lot. Do I enjoy the Cruze as much? I've got to say, not quite as much. This is a little more of a Kevin Cleary knife than this one is, okay, for sure. I'm not going to keep those around because they're not super, super comparable. The other knife I want to bring in, because lots of people are familiar with it. Maybe you don't. I mean, I'm not saying every single person out there owns a Sebenza. I know it's an expensive knife, but a lot of people are at least familiar with how big it is. You've watched other videos on it. You kind of have an idea about this knife. And so if you put these two side by side, okay, these are probably a little more comparable. They're both fairly carryable. This is, 2 ounces heavier, so it's still a bigger, more bulky knife for sure. But probably a little closer to this, certainly than the F3 is going to be. And it does give you a good idea of the size. So you can see this is just a hair, like less than an eighth of an inch shorter, than the Inkosi. It doesn't have quite as much cutting edge either. And of course, the deployment is going to be different, and there's a little more of a design aesthetic going on here from Curtis Knives. What else have I got? That's okay. Here's another well-known, popular high-end knife. This, of course, is a Koenig Arius. Really, really fantastic knife. And here's where this knife and the other knife that I want to show you in a second is where you're going to run into some problems with custom knives, at least for me in recommending them. If there's a favorite designer you have, if there's a favorite knife out there and you want to save up and own something that's truly special to you, more power to you. If you're watching this and you're saying, Kevin, I would like to just experience that quality and that attention to detail that you get from a custom, there are a lot of high-end knives out there that are going to deliver that. And certainly Riyadh is going to have a few of those. To a somewhat lesser extent, We as well is going to have those kinds of options. And if you've handled a really nice a really nice Riyadh, you're really not missing much, guys. You're not, okay? So wanted to throw some of those comparisons in for you. Let's get these guys out of the way and give you my overall take on this knife. I think, for one, you have to consider the source here. So Dave Curtis, he's famous for the F3, which is a very popular model, very cool knife, and a favorite of mine in particular. But if you like that aesthetic and you just don't want something quite as big and quite as bulky, this is a pretty good option. The other thing is, if you want a custom knife, but you want something that's a little more time tested and reliable, this is what I would kind of qualify as a production custom. And what I mean by that is, yes, it's a custom knife, but it's a design, it's a model that the maker just turns out lots of, right? So when you get to that point, you pretty well know what you're getting into. There are no big surprises with a knife like this where, I don't know, they decided to go with some weird blade shape or some crazy handle design that may or may not be comfortable, or materials that you're not sure will match. This is a pretty safe knife if you're looking at something custom. And considering the prices of a lot of popular custom knives, and even less than full custom knives, This is a pretty good option. Consider the base price on this, I think, is like 625 or 650. Well, that's the same price as the Custom Knife Factory Snafu, the collab with Peter Rosenti. I don't know why I'm losing my voice right now. Sorry, guys. I want to finish this off, though. There we go. Let's try to finish this last couple of minutes off here. Um, when it comes to a custom knife, one, this is a known quantity, and two, the price is not all that crazy. If you compare this to like a Shamwari or to some of the other, you know, a Rosenti custom or something like that, you're coming in at quite a bit lower and getting something that is very, very good. Okay, so I'm a big fan of this knife. I absolutely love the design. Now that's subjective, okay, but to me this is one of the most beautiful knives available on the market right now. I absolutely think this is gorgeous. The blade grind itself, I can sit and look at this blade grind all day. It is so fantastic. And when you move to the rest of the knife, it's not like you're like, oh, but the rest of the knife. No, the whole thing is absolutely beautiful. And I appreciate that an awful lot. Not only that, but it's useful. It's tough. It really checks a lot of boxes that I'm looking for in a high-end knife. And so I enjoy this an awful lot. I get that custom knives are not for everybody, and I get that every custom knife is not for everybody because there's a lot of money to invest here. But if you're at all interested, I don't think you'll be disappointed in a Curtis Knives Cruze. Thanks for watching. Dave, if you're watching this, keep up the good work. I love the stuff that you do, and I look forward to being able to enjoy it for many years to come. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will put a link to Dave's website down there so you could find one of these for yourself. If you're looking on the secondary market, it's still a good idea to familiarize yourself with the website, just so you know what the options are and what they cost and all that kind of stuff, so you're kind of familiar with what you're dealing with. Okay, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I will also put an affiliate link to DLT Trading down below. DLT does from time to time have some Curtis knives in stock. I'm not saying they're there right now. In fact, if I say it on video, you almost know they won't. It seems to be that seems to be the way it goes these days. Again, thanks for watching. We'll talk to you soon. Bye.